Good morning. My name is Daniel Long. I'm a writer and moderator for the Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies Institute. Today is February 14, 2025. It's Valentine's Day or Hearts Day. The title of our forum is US Root of Philippine Chaos, Impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte, Economic Mess, and Spy Scares. We have we have two speakers today. Kamentong Laurel, President of the Asian Century Philippines, Kado Maglinawan, Vice President of the Asian Century Philippines. Joining us later about 11 p.m., 11 a.m. will be Sas Rogando Sasot, PhD in International Relations and a scholar in Beijing. We will also have a panel of reactors. Tess Padilla from Cagayan de Oro, Padla from Cagayan de Oro, Rico Osmeña from Cebu, and Pancha from Tuguegarao. And there will be other reactors joining us. Our first speaker will be Kamentong Laurel. He will give us a presentation on the root of the Philippine chaos being the United States. Let's welcome Kamentong Laurel for his opening remarks.
Magandang araw po sa lahat. Tayo po ay nandito upang pag-usapan ng ilang importanteng bagay, issues sa bayan natin at sa mundo po natin. We work on the principle that we need people's direct action to affect the events impacting on their lives. And of course, itong nakarang araw, marami pong nagbabago sa mundo po natin, which is very welcome. By the way, let me just mention that we have Self-Supplying Rep from Iloilo also with us now in the among the panel of reactors. Ed Pancha from Tuguegarao and the media group there. We have Jose Lojero, June I call him, in Iloilo. We have Rico Osmeña in Cebu, who is a radio commentator also in Cebu. He has a program, I think, every day 11:30 noon, and he's taking time out to join us today. If there are others, of course, we have a participant from China, from Beijing, and let me see. Okay, so the title of my presentation is U.S. sows chaos, Filipinos fight back. But I start with another article I wrote for the Pinoy Expose entitled U.S. behind Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment move. The cacophony of sorry. I have a problem with my tablet. Can I have a hard copy? Very vibrant. The national discourse in the Philippines these days is like that of a madhouse. Parang insane asylum na ang debate po sa ating national discourse. Literally, the cacophony of acrimonious exchanges between the crazed and rabid trolls and political hatchetmen of the BBM administration and the Duterte partisans reached a climax with the filing of a fourth impeachment case against the Duterte icon, Vice President Sara, based on totally baseless and spurious allegations. If there is anyone that should be facing impeachment, it is President Bongbong Marcos and his key henchmen for ruining the nation's unity, peace, stability, and economic health due to their massive plunder of the 2025 national budget that has enraged all sectors of Philippine society. Today's acrimonious national discourse was not at all expected when BBM ascended to the presidency in June 2022. The nation's hope for unity was very evident as he and Vice President Sara Duterte accepted their mandate to lead the country together. We can flash the first slide. People also expected that BBM would continue all important national policies, particularly the independent foreign policy, which had been passed on to his administration by the previous government of President Duterte to the great benefit of the nation. In January of 2023, PBBM Bongbong Marcos went on a state visit to China, and China not only rolled out the red carpet for BBM, Bongbong Marcos and his entourage, but also gave him the distinct honor of being the first head of state welcomed by President Xi Jinping that year. Bongbong Marcos and President Xi then signed a comprehensive strategic cooperation agreement with China committing a 22.8 billion US dollar investment for the Philippines, aside from ongoing Belt and Road Initiative projects already under construction in the Philippines. However, less than a month later, the BBM government inexplicably shut off all communications with the Chinese embassy. Meanwhile, the Philippine Coast Guard started executing quote-unquote assertive transparency provocations against the Chinese Coast Guard in the disputed portions of the South China Sea. The abrupt change in attitude is clearly in preparation for BBM's state visit to the United States in May 2023, following the quote-unquote tradition of all Philippine presidents except President Duterte, who never went to the United States, visiting Washington to pay homage, as all vassals do, to the sitting U.S. leader. As a result of that visit, we suddenly saw a series of attacks against VP Sara over her perceived ties to China and against her father, President Duterte, on the issue of EJK's Pogo, with the threat of hauling him before the International Kangaroo Court, that is the ICC. So you can see, hidden in all the tons of charges against the Vice President Sara Duterte is actually her alleged worrisome silence on the West Philippine Sea, Pogo, etc. So let's move on. And did you know that the entire bureaucracy was systematically rooted out of officials under President Duterte? So there was a pogrom of officials appointed from the time of President Duterte. Tellingly, one of the issues raised in the impeachment complaint is quote-unquote Sara's worrisome silence on the issue of the West Philippine Sea. To us, here lies the real motive for Vice President Sara's impeachment. The Americans are the ones working behind the scene to wreak havoc on her political career, lest she restore our independent foreign policy should she become our next president in 2028. Thus, the impeachment of Vice President Sara is a quote-unquote marriage of convenience between the Trapos, who want to remain in power forever like Romualdez, and Uncle Sam, who wants us to be its forever vassal by destroying leaders not willing to serve its interests. Next segment is the UFD's deep state in interest in the Philippines. Just going back to a bit of history with an image from the time of Marcos Sr. And the highlighted there is the Philippines' proximity to China has long been seductive for the United States. For Filipinos, it is a curse. And anyway, you can see, by the way, the paper on the Asian Century Philippines website. I think our technician will put a QR code later for you to just scan and go to the website. When President McKinley annexed the Philippines in 1898, the goal was to gain a foothold in Asia for US goods to penetrate the huge China market that other Western colonizers in the region was already hugely benefiting from. Today, the US seeks to keep its foothold in the Philippines to prevent China from expanding totally over the global market and isolating the US in this region, making the Philippines a forward platform for launching destabilization of the region. And this is an article from War on the Rocks, an American military website, announcing that it intended to use the Ayungin Shoal, PRP Sierra Madre, as a forward operating base. So what we present to you all have a clear basis and evidence. Now, it's very important to understand the next segment because many people cannot see this. That the U.S. tentacles in the Philippines is with the Philippine oligarchy. It is vital to understand, if we can slide in the next image already. It is vital to understand that the U.S. still controls the Philippines primarily through the Philippine traditional economic and financial oligarchy, represented by big business mainly revolving around the Makati Business Club and associated organizations. The direct linkage between the U.S. financial oligarchy and Philippine big business is through the U.S. Philippine Society co-chaired by former U.S. CIA chief John Negroponte and the present CEO of many privatized public utilities, Manuel Pangilinan of the Salim Metro Pacific Investment Group. And you can see a photo here of May 2nd, 2023, where Martin Romualdez, Bongbong Marcos, James Romualdez, all the recognized American proxies meeting with the former Ambassador Negroponte and the society. Okay, let's move on. The Philippine oligarchy controls at least half of the economy, wielding expanded economic political power after the U.S. oligarchy led EDSA Uno coup that installed the all-out neoliberal regimes of Corazon C. Aquino and others that followed, that instituted total privatization, deregulation, liberalization that has resulted 29 years later in the impoverishment of the Philippines and the withering of the state and government. Here's another image of the collaboration of the Philippine oligarchy, in this case with Pedro Montes there and the Ayala icon, and Manny Pangilinan again. The privatization of public utilities has been an unbounded boon to the Philippine oligarchy, taking in at exorbitant rates the public utilities, consumer payments that otherwise were the non-tax revenues of government. They spent trillions going to the oligarchy's coffers, more than enough to buy up all mainstream media, politicians, civil society organizations, and countless established NGOs ad nauseam. And you can see just a part of this empire of the oligarchy in the Philippines, centering around Metro Pacific, PLDT, PIDEX Mining, Forum Energy, which is a very, very critical issue on the South China Sea struggle, which Forum Energy seeks to monopolize with the Americans. And very few people understand that. But you can see here, US ASEAN Business Council, US Chamber of Commerce, First Pacific, Bowery Group of Asia, Defense Department, all connected to the Asia Maritime Transparency of the group associated with the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Albert de Rosario Institute, and so on and so forth, including, of course, the media controlled by Manny Pangilinan, Philippine Star, This is World, TV5, Bloomberg Philippines, Inquirer. So this is just a brief flashback and focus on this oligarchy and the linkage to the United States of America. But let's fast forward to the Trump administration today. What is in store for us from the Trump administration? While the new Trump administration in the US is still focused on determining its final strategies and resolutions with regards to its major crises, Ukraine, Gaza, Dodge, Department of Government Efficiency, it pays lip service to the standard routinary platitudes with regard to relations with the Philippines. There are clear signs that the Trump administration does not put the Philippines among its priorities at this time, and clearly it's Doge or
Doge.
Department of Doge freezing of foreign aid has had a severe negative impact on the proxy military in the Philippines, the proxy NGO and media programs in the Philippines, which is the good news for us. So, according to this report from Philippine Star, which we will tell you more of later, 4 billion of Philippine programs frozen, but more and more are now appearing, and we'll be reporting to you about all these in our next presentation. The US under President Trump will begin the contraction of its hegemony, which is definitely going to be resisted by the deep state. So let us keep that in mind, that while Trump may have his plans, there is a struggle within the United States going against the new direction of President Trump. The deep state, variously called the blob, the military industrial finance complex, among others. Trump accepts the reality of the multipolar world where the global power architecture will be based on regional powers grounded on geographic, economic, political predominance, and governance of global affairs, effectively ending any global hegemonism. And this next image from Responsible Statecraft of the Quincy Institute reflects this, that Rubio openly discusses multipolarity with many audiences and forums. Of course, the Filipinos have been fighting back for the past decade. Filipinos fight back, advancing the struggle. Recently, led by the Iglesia Ni Cristo and joined in by other Filipinos in Metro Manila and across major cities of the country, 4.5 million Filipinos marched and rallied on January 13, 2025 to demand from the Bongbong Marcos Jr. government the restoration of peace and unity of the nation, with a clear underlying message to the government to desist from the divisive and destabilizing political offensive against Vice President Sara Duterte. Thereafter, Filipinos escalated the crusade against the US proxy war preparations by launching the third year of the Philippine anti-war, anti-US bases, anti-typhoon missile campaign from Cagayan de Oro, conducting caravans to Lumbia US EDCA Air Base and Tagoloan, where the PBDEC Ecozone is being converted to a naval base, as well as a caravan to Bukidnon. To follow was a February 481 kilometers caravan from Manila to protest US Typhoon missiles at Lawag International Airport, Ilocos Norte, where the missile launchers are based. But the US pulled out the missile system abruptly. And of course, up to this day, we have no information where it is. It has been moved. Subsequently, Bongbong Marcos lied to the nation and the world that he would, quote, return the US Typhoon missile system, unquote, if China ends, quote unquote, aggressive acts. Bongbong Marcos Jr. has absolutely no decision in the disposition of US military equipment and only exposes his desperation to divert attention from the political and economic problems of his own making in doing so. The US missile system was picked up by a US C-17 Globemaster military transport plane and moved, many believe, to Guam as part of the Trump Sea talks. This is the speculation. Let's move on to the next segment. Filipinos versus or fighting USA, National Endowment for Democracy, and proxy media and civil society in the Philippines. The truth and fact-based independent Filipino civil society, media, and social media bloggers have for the past decade been aggressively fighting the information war against the massive disinformation and cognitive warfare waged by the US in the Philippines. At this juncture, we would like to give a salute to the courageous and steadfast 40 bloggers who have fought back against the attempts at intimidation and suppression by the US proxy congressmen in the lower house of Congress. So you have the photo of the 40 heroes and more. And of course, one of them is with us here, uh, Danny Long. It's not in the picture. Are you there? You're not there.
No, 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 no.
Okay, but we're very proud of Danny Long because he just hit a jackpot in TikTok. How many?
900
900,000 views of one of his
videos.
posts. So as a spearhead against the U.S. cognitive warfare, the Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies Institute and its various social media programs have been subjected to various attacks by the U.S. proxies in the Philippines, particularly by the oligarchy-controlled mainstream media directed by the National Endowment for Democracy or USA. The recent expose from Elon Musk of the media and civil society octopus around the world funded by the National Endowment for Democracy and USA also brings to fore the operations of these gargantuan subversive US funding agencies in the Philippines. In one classic case, in the country's mainstream media, as USA funded quote-unquote international independent media organization called Internews. Let's show the next slide. Fed disinformation about the Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies Institute to Philippine Star, which dutifully tagged us in ACPSSI as influence operations for an unnamed foreign entity. So this report came out and mentioning me in particular as president of the ACPSSI in one of our projects, of course, the Global Talk News Radio. Let's read it briefly. For instance, the report of Philippine Star goes by Christina Chi, of course. We mentioned her, but no. Anyway, for instance, on February 7, 2023, YouTube channel Global Talk News Radio brought together talking heads from the think tanks Integrated Development Studies Institute and Asian Century Philippines to host an episode entitled Philippines Project Ukraine in Asia. At the 1 minute 29 mark, Chairman Tulo Relation Century President said, alam natin ang giyera masama sa buhay ng isang katauhan at ng Pilipino. Etong ilang araw na mga nakaraan, mayroong pangyayari dito sa bayan natin na mukhang tinutulak ang mundo, ang bansa natin po, ang bansa po natin sa kaguluhang ganyan di nakikita natin, kaguluhang ganyan din na nakikita natin sa Ukraine. And below the highlighted yellow portion, let's read it if we can or focus on that right below. In its August 12 report titled Nexus of Manipulation, Anatomy of Influence, Operations in the Philippines, Media Development Nonprofit Internews, highlighted in orange. This is very significant. Described the narrative of the Ukrainization of the Philippines by the US as an example of distorted narrative intended to disparage the latter. Okay. So, what is Internews? The source of that information of the Philippine Star and the report of Christina Chi is Internews. Internews that the following image shows is a USAID funded news NGO and also shows the linkage of in the Philippines of US aid funding to other media organizations and civil society and business groups. Let's give some attention to the list of partners below. You can see the 5-year US aid funded project supports and advances media capacity and independence to enhance democratic governance that provides economic and political inclusion and promotes social stability. Internews is implementing the initiative for media freedom in partnership with key media, civil society, private sector, and academic organizations such as Asian Center for Journalism in UP, if I recall correctly, Engage Media Foundation for Media Alternatives, Life Solutions Incorporated, Makati Business Club, Mindanao State University Legal Aid and Human Rights Center, National Union of Journalists of the Philippines, which is associated with the radical left. I might be accused of red tacking, but I know them, NUJP, supposed to be militant nationalist, but gets funding from USAID. The Peace and Conflict Journalism Network, again, peace, but beneath it are subversive operation. Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism, yan. The group of Maria Ressa, Manu Mangas, Marites Dangilan Vito, RIWI, University of the Philippines College of Mass Communication Foundation, through the Department of Journalism, and of course, last but not the least, guess who? Vera File. Okay. The National Endowment, U.S. National Endowment for Democracy is another American instrument of subverting countries that have been actively waging disinformation war in the Philippines over the decade. This previously the authorized version of the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, specializing in legal open funding of journalists, media organizations, and NGOs, academia, and civil society organizations, has been at the forefront of the cognitive warfare in the Philippines, whose density and intensity of subversive activities has increased exponentially in recent years. So we show you the headline from Hungarian Conservative, which is also a target because it is anti-war against Russia, anti-Ukraine war. The Hungarian Conservative published this entitled Elon Musk takes on National Endowment for Democracy, Washington's regime change machine. Why is this very important for us today here in the Philippines? Well, the NED, the USA, and the deep state is still conducting the regime change operation against Sara Duterte. This is what the impeachment is all about. In recent years, our struggle against the Philippine news and information outlets and networks funded by the National Endowment for Democracy climax. But the country's political and judicial establishment whitewashed the exposés and court cases filed against the Filipino proxy news outlets like Rappler. Remember, there was a case because of its foreign funding. But anyway, the following diagram has been used to explain and highlight the linkages of the National Endowment for Democracy, the various foreign political entities, and the Philippine media groups awash with NED funding. It's too expanded. Can we? Well, yeah, I think we can try to show the entire to get the sense of what the octopus, the tentacles are. National Endowment for Democracy. This is, I think, it's just by 2019 and 2020. 35 million for the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility. People there I know personally very well, but I've been in conflict with them since the year 2000. They were praising, for example, in year 2000, 2001, Chavez Singson for being the key political personalities that brought down elected President Erap. 35 million at that time. 25 million for PCIJ of Malu Mangat and Company, Marites Dangilan Vito, who is now very overused by the Americans. Maria Ressa, of course, Peace Prize winner that is now exposed as a fraud, uh, being an icon of the greatest warmonger in history in the United States of America. And I wonder what else I can read there. PCIJ, Rappler, $142,000 at that time. Pero files $197,000 or and more. And that has kept going on until today. Maybe we will see if the funding continues to flow after the Dodge action. So let's move on to the next segment. The West Philippine narrative collapses. Well, actually, the West Philippine narrative has been headed by these US-funded media outlets, academic groups, NGOs, all the past 10 years. But now we can see the West Philippine Sea narrative collapsing. In 2014, the US and its Philippine proxies initiated an arbitration case at The Hague, Permanent Court of Arbitration. By the way, it's not a court in the conventional sense, but uh, Stefan Dujarric, spokesperson of Ban Ki-moon of the United Nations, is still presently the spokesman of the United Nations under Gutierrez. And my comment there at the time, if we can scroll below, a very diplomatic way, what Dujarric said. The UN doesn't have a legal position on the legal, doesn't have a position on the legal and procedural merits of the case or on the disputed claims. So the UN does not have a position, which is a very diplomatic way of saying the PCA arbitration has no relation to the United Nations, much less UN back. Yeah. But that lie, that fraud went on for over 10 years. And it's still being prattled by J. Tariela, which we will go on to discuss. Bongbong Marcos, when queried about Marcolet, we have consistently debunked the West Philippine Sea narrative, but only a limited audience could be reached, with the mainstream media controlled by the US and its proxies. But on February 4, 2025, Congressman Rodante Marcoleta, reacting to the Congress tripartite hearing on fake news, cited the West Philippine Sea as an example of such fake news. A remark that hit the front pages, created a sensation, and forced US proxy Philippine Coast Guard spokesman Commodore J. Tariela and President Bongbong Marcos himself to respond lamely. Bongbong Marcos, when queried about Marcoleta's assertion, did not address the West Philippine Sea issue, but diverted it to kidding that Marcoleta is campaigning for the Senate and is only seeking publicity. So he never answered. Marcoleta actually challenged the chief West Philippine Sea spokesman, Tariela, to produce an international map that has the West Philippine Sea mark, which of course no one can produce. It added to the response to Tariela. I added to the response to Tariela and all other West Philippine champions my comment below, if we can flash that. I said, because Tariela said, how will the world support our use of the term West Philippine Sea if we ourselves undermine? Nobody is undermining it. And it is intrinsically unsupportable because that's what I said here now. The world does not support the Philippines' claim over its so-called West Philippine Sea because it is still disputed by 5 other parties. The majority of Filipinos are deliberately being misled by the likes of Tariela to create a tunnel vision of the issue revolving around the quote-unquote China threat boogeyman serving the strategic proxy war plan of the United States deep state and finance proxy in the forum energy, financial proxy in the forum energy. Mani Pangilinan, we directly point to seeking to monopolize the oil and gas of the disputed area and prevent realization of the offer of China to quote unquote meet halfway to establish exploration, development, and beneficial win-win ventures. We also posted here as a reminder from Madam Sastrogando on the specifics of the West Philippine Sea. The next slide, which I will no longer read, you can read it on our blog, on our website, but it clarifies many points about the West Philippine Sea. Finally, what is the solution to the West Philippine Sea issue and to all this crisis in the country today? Let us resolve it. And I go back to the direction set by President Duterte during his term and reported here in what year is this? Let me see. 2023. South China Sea, new Philippine leader, meaning Bongbong Marcos, must honor joint exploration agreement with Beijing or face conflict, said President Duterte, who was no longer in office at that time. So the solution is very simple. Let us restore the independent foreign policy so the Philippines can deal equitably, equally with all nations of the world, particularly in our region with China, which has the offer of meeting halfway on any issue, any problem confronting the two nations. But the Philippines is prevented from reaching a beneficial win-win solution because Bongbong Marcos has embraced the deep state of the United States of America, and I make that distinction because we are still awaiting more positive actions from the Trump administration itself. And then if we do accomplish this, we can move forward to earning billions of dollars from the joint venture with China on the South China Sea and more joint ventures with China for our nickel processing in the country, which Indonesia is doing spectacular electric vehicles, batteries with their nickel, and so on and so forth. With that, I hope I did not talk too long. we'll have our panel of reactors. Maybe briefly give a 1-2 sentence comment.
Okay.
Let's try this new approach because some like Rico Osmeña of Cebu may have to leave at 11 o'clock. So if there's any question, and Joshua, are we able to project them if they have any question? Okay.
Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a panel of reactors. Ms. Padla, Mr. Rico Osmeña, and Mr. Ed Pancia from Tuguegarao. If we may have 1-2 sentence reaction to what Kamentong Laurel has just presented to us about the activities of the US proxies and the West Philippine Sea.
Any hands raised?
Okay.
Again, let's,
Yeah. Do we have any reactors? The panel of
well,
reactors. If
we have, of course,
please raise your hands in Zoom if you wish to give a 1-2 sentence reaction to what Kamentong Laurel just
we'll give it a
presented.
minute for any hands raised.
Yeah, we'll give a minute.
If there is none, we'll proceed with
Okay.
the spy versus spy story. From,
Okay, so
Ado.
Mr. Osmeña just raised his hand in Zoom.
Rico, please come in.
Please open your mic and let us know your reactions to what Mentong just presented.
May buntag Pilipinas, may buntag Cebu. Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat yan sa Manila, no? Dito po kasi sa Cebu, itong pinresent nyo ngayon na issue against the US dominance, no, sa ating policy making. Ay isang concern din po sa Cebu. Especially dito po sa Mactan, kung saan ay narito po ang isa sa mga EDCA na base militar. And katabing-katabi po ito ng Mactan Cebu International Airport na ngayon ay kilalang isang tourist haven. Kamentong, ano kaya ang reaction natin? Ano kaya yung mga posibleng dapat gawin ng mga Cebuanos? Especially ang concern natin yung tungkol dito sa EDCA.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ginoong Rico Osmeña. Maayong buntag po dyan sa Cebu. Tulad ng ginawa po natin noong nakaraang taon, 2024, which you attended, we had a Congress in Cebu, anti-war Congress. Let's do it again and let's do more marches to protest this and bring this to the attention of the world. And on our part, we have our friends Filipino friends in the United States, whom we have been requesting to reach out to the Trump administration because some of our people also campaigned for Trump there, to bring our message to them. Maybe if we can, at one time within this year, have a delegation to the United States to present our petition against these bases here. Maybe you can join us, Rico, from Cebu.
Okay, salamat po, Kamento.
Thank you very much from Cebu. Anybody else?
Anybody else who wishes to give a one or two sentence reaction to the
Si Tess Padla ba nakapasok? Yeah, we're
Yes,
all,
I'm
all,
here. Yes, I'm here. May I
Tess.
say something?
yes loud and clear.
Yeah. Medyo bago lang kasi yung phone ko, so I don't know how to how to unmute or whatever. But may I say something, Sir Herman? Kasi kami dito sa Cagayan de Oro, we are very much concerned about what's going on dito sa entire Philippines relative to the EDCA and everything, no? Kasi I think early of last month, may uranium na nasabat dito sa Taguluan. And we know that they are trying to put up a naval base station there in Taguluan, which is very proximate to my city. no? Actually, we can still even claim kasi Misamis Oriental yan, and Cagayan de Oro City is the capital city of Misamis Oriental. So, medyo concerned ako dyan, in the same manner as Senator Amy was concerned about having to put up or place the Typhoon missiles in Lawag International Airport, which is a civilian facility. So para bang binabastos na talaga tayo dito sa Pilipinas, and our president is not doing anything about it. Plus, yung ating Defense Secretary pa, si Gibo Teodoro, is parang nag-i-invite pa ng trouble by announcing or by saying in an interview that we are going to purchase our own. So take note that even Putin made a comment that this is some sort of an invitation somehow for the other superpowers for actually kumbaga parang madala na rin tayo sa nuclear arms race, because we're having uranium here and we are a very small country, and we fear that our country will become the next Ukraine. Magiging yung away ng mga superpowers dito sa atin because of this, pardon the word, stupid decision of our chief executive sa mga decision niya, you know, yung mga pronouncements niya even during the kick-off yung sa senatorial slate niya, nag-mention pa siya doon, which got the reaction of the spokesperson of the Chinese embassy, si Guo Joaquin or something, he should not use the issue of the West Philippine Sea to manipulate the reaction of Filipinos in this electoral campaign. So para bang, wait, what's going on, Mr. President? What's going on, Mr. Secretary of Defense? Parang without you realizing it, you are putting us in the center of this, parang magiging talaga tayo, magiging venue of a proxy war.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Madam Tess. With one S. Tess with one S.
Yeah,
Kasi
Tess with one S.
nagkakamali ko with two S. Thank you very much. Celso Kainglet is the next one in line. Celso, are you ready? Yeah. Danny?
Yes, Sir Kainglet. President. Yes, you can be heard.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kamentong. Good morning, everybody, for the excellent presentation. Indeed, there is some good news because, as we know, that Trump is endearing himself to President Xi of China and President Putin of Russia, and Dodge cut off a lot of aid. However, we have to bear in mind that the US government is not monolithic. No? For example, during the 1989 coup, Washington was supporting Cory, whereas Pentagon was supporting Gringo. That's why when the then Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger came to Manila, Cory did not meet him because Cory knew. Now, what we have to watch and see is how can Trump forcefully control his government, especially the deep state. Much more his Secretary of State, Rubio, who is a superlative neocon. How much leeway can Rubio conduct his own operation, and how much Trump could control him? And lastly, Trump and President Digong consider themselves as friends. Maybe in the personal level, Digong can call Trump and request Trump to tell his minions to hold his forces from harassing Vice President Sara. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, Danny, I think we have to move on
Okay.
with two more papers to
Okay. Thank you for our panel of reactors. Now we're moving on to the next speaker, Kado Paglinawan, Vice President of Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies, to give us a presentation entitled Spy Scares by USA, the Root of Chaos in the Philippines. Let us welcome Kado for his opening remarks.
Good morning to all who have were tuned in to this forum. Before I start, I would like to remind all of you that this paper is available at our website, acph.com. acph.com. Spy Scares by USA, Root of Chaos in the Philippines. Justice and the National Bureau of Investigation have recently released a spate of cases accusing certain Chinese of spying activities. At first glance, the arrest seemed to be significant because no less than the Armed Forces Chief of Staff, Romeo Browner, the Secretary of Justice, Jesus Crispin Rimulya, and the NBI Director, Jaime Santiago, presented the suspects to the media. As days went by, however, the frivolity of the situation unfolded when certain equipment that were confiscated turned out to be available from Lazada and Shopee. The raw information gathered also could be sourced from Google and Waze, thus of public import and common knowledge. No forcible entries were also committed by the alleged offenders. Public doubt of the integrity of the apprehensions also grew when the NBI refused access to the detainees by next of kin, legal counsel, and consular visitation by their respective embassy in the Philippines. But worst of all, the whole show deteriorated into a witch hunt as the suspect they arrested was the wrong person they thought they were surveilling all along. The Chinese national now detained by the National Bureau of Chin, a graduate from Yangzhou Industrial, Vocational, and Technical College, where he majored in oil and petroleum refinery. Deng Wanxing means clear, clear as in paglinawan. Mr. Clear has been mistaken by the NBI for Professor Deng Wanxing, whose Chinese name means celebration. Ang problema po kasi sa Chinese, written in Chinese characters, hindi po syllabicated sa Ingles o Filipino. And this Deng is a distinguished academic affiliated with the Chinese People's Liberation Army University of Science and Technology. The blunder by the forces of the Philippines, the Department of Justice and the National Bureau of Investigation is nothing short of a man-made catastrophe, as it sends the credibility of three important agencies of the Philippine government to smithereens. I mean, really, given the present condition of our nation, what level of seriousness can we really weigh on espionage? internally, is our security under the threat at the level building up where the new People's Army was rooted to be already in the boundaries of Metro Manila, just like in the 70s? When the Moro National Liberation Front was about to separate Mindanao from the rest of the Republic, are there almost an uncontrollable slew of violent mass demonstrations hanging, banging at the doors of Malacanang, a barangay where the Philippine National Police today is not capable of controlling? Is not the United States the only source of chaos permeating in our country? I will say it with a straight face. Since February 2, 2023, the only cause of destabilization begins with why our president is tolerating foreign intervention in this country. Not only tolerating, but has made it a policy. On that day, 4 more sites were added to the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement of 2014 to suit the U.S. Air Force new doctrine called Agile Combat Employment, designed to embolden the American presence in the Indo-Pacific. Let's go to the next slide. Designed to embolden American presence in the Indo-Pacific, an essential element of President Barack Obama's Asian pivot policy. But why single out China? The reason is deep in the weakness of the ACE doctrine, as pointed out not by Chinese spies, but by none less than the U.S. Naval Institute. So the U.S. is biding time now through propaganda, because what it says cannot be supported by its military capability. I would say they are 5 years behind China. China is well advanced in the Pentagon stratagems, with China's introduction of 2 sixth-generation superjets and the Sichuan, not your favorite restaurant or food, but China's first Type 076 vessel, named for the South China Sea, the largest combat ship in the Chinese Navy, and one of the world's largest amphibious assault ships, all launched only last December. You will see this slide in the acph.com. Ayan po yung explanation ng US Naval Institute bakit itong agile combat employment ng US Air Force is a dud. Bakit po? Simple-simple, dahil sa Google pa lang, mga kabansa, sa Google pa lang, the Chinese tactics, yung umbrella ng US Naval Institute, surmises it is more likely that the People's Liberation Army strategic support sense can very well reduce its preparedness not only less than 24 hours, but in matters of minutes. Why? Because of precisely China's capability when it comes to its rocket force. Due to this hang-up, the U.S. has held the Philippines as hostage for the past 2 years, with our independent foreign policy betrayed by the sitting president, who is in obeisance to the Americans, neglecting what the Filipino people in numerous parts of Asia have already disclosed to be the most urgent national concern. President Marcos Jr. says his priority is protecting sovereignty of the country in the mythical West Philippine Sea, but only 5% agrees with him, when over 70% says the priority is curbing inflation or microeconomic. According to the recent Social Weather Station survey, 63% of Filipinos identify themselves as poor, marking the highest percentage of self-rated poverty in the country in over 20 years. This means that a significant majority of Filipinos considering their household income to be below what is needed to meet basic needs. Marcos Jr. has failed to deliver us post-COVID-19 pandemic, which was supposed to be his initial mandate when he was elected. Everybody thought that the Marcos president would deliver us from the negative effects of COVID-19 when our production was virtually onto a halt. So, our national security now is primarily measured by what the Americans say it is: the protection of the 9 EDCA bases. And Marcos agrees that that is the only thing he sees, because that is the only thing that can ensure its power amid charges of wanton corruption surrounding him. Sadly, the only way to enforce this anomaly is through authoritarianism. As a result, constitutionally guaranteed freedoms and inherent rights of citizens have been trampled upon. The classic example of this oppression is the use of 3,000 police forces deployed in a provincial city just to arrest one individual. This never happened even in the dark days of martial law in the 1970s. But even 10% of that was sent to Oakland Exodus to arrest Sulkifli Abdil alias Marwan at Mamasapalo in Maguindanao in 2015. In fact, a special action force of only 73, 29 survived, 44 were massacred. But the worst curtailment has occurred against the economic rights of the people. Immediately following the 4 new additional bases was the repudiation of Marcos of the 23 billion development assistance pledged by Xi Jinping, discussed earlier by Commento. A stimulus that could have allowed new money into our economy, alleviating the people from the effects of worldwide inflation. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is the most urgent threat now against our national security? But President Marcos himself, which has underlined the foreign policy making, has all ongoing infrastructure, especially those involving railways, predominantly one in Mindanao, were first announced for rebidding. Kakatirahan pa nila. They were just taken. Kasi obvious mga kabansa na may disposal is the people's resource. Philippine Coast Guard has been used to promote false flags in the South China Sea, even mostly outside of our 12 nautical miles territorial seas. Tourists from China have been imposed a quota. As a result, arrivals have not even reached 10% of the volume achieved in the 3-year period of Duterte from 2017 to 2019. All told, in the past 2 years, only 500,000 tourists from China compared to the 3 years 2017 to 19 of Duterte. 4 million. Because of this, the United States continues to be desperate, winning the hearts and minds of the Filipino people through cognitive warfare. As our people have grown accustomed to the ugly head of injustice, having undergone 500 years of colonial abuse, some leading to numerous massacres under Spaniards, Americans, and our own kind. In stark contrast, our amity with the Chinese people extends over a millennium. This is why Chinese espionage is too hard sell, and xenophobia is dead in the water. Besides, is there anything the Chinese want to know about us that still has clandestine cipher by its 6th-generation military technology, industrial revolution in economic terms? I suppose we are an open book to China, as there are 28 million individuals of direct Chinese descent legally residing in the Philippines, whether they are citizens or resident aliens. I was one of those, or rather, I was the one who blew the whistle on April 20, 2024 regarding the deployment of Typhoon missile system in the Philippines 9 days earlier. The presence of this offensive weapon in Philippine territory is a blatant violation of Philippine Constitution and our treaty with ASEAN on neutrality and non-nuclear proliferation. Of course, this has diminished President Marcos' credibility down the cellar, as it added to strained relations not only between Beijing and Manila, but between US President Biden and Xi Jinping of China. That it had to be hurriedly removed from its former position in Lawan City a few days after President Donald Trump was sworn into office. Does this make me a Chinese spy? Source. The specific website, and the link is there in acph. There is something, however, that the Americans have been consistent about, besides shallowness. And this is hubris, especially when they earn their living out of it. In an article I wrote for Asian Century last November, I have exhaustively dealt on how the United States built one of its toolkit marble, alleging that China had launched Volt Typhoon, a ransomware cyber criminal group allegedly aimed at hacking US assets. Marble, the software, ladies and gentlemen, is by Microsoft. Is that a Chinese company? No, Christopher Asher, FBI director, 5 months earlier. Ito ho, sinabi ni Ray, itong disinformation, we're up to something like 2,056 of the People's Republic of China trying to steal our technology. In April, before principle of innocent passage. Despite President Marcos' request for faith-saving secrecy that he had to agree to a Chinese protocol previously covered Estrada concerning the routine resupply of humanitarian needs by our troops aboard the BRP Sierra Madre, the Philippines called for a bilateral consultative meetings last month, January 16. Alam po ninyo kung protocol. Documented sila. Critical West Philippine Sea and the reincarnation of Philippine cartoon character Kekpoy in archipelagic that are nothing but your nautical man. Of legislative spares money painting a small town mayor of Pampanga as a Chinese spy to divert attention from its incompetence and to cover up the magnitude of syndicated corruption in and outside of government involving the Marcos Araneta Romualdez dynasty. Celebrating the dubious self-confession of a certain Xi Jian that Alice Go is hoping is again another case of mistaken identity. Short lang, ni Alice Go. Let's try. Yun. As of January 15, this year, the Philippine Statistics Authority, Alice, those records are still valid despite Solicitor General Menardo Guevara's petition in the Regional Trial Court of Tarlac to have Guo's birth certificate cancelled. Ang dami ho nila pinagsasabi. Ang dami nilang conclusions. Wala naman sila na-presenta na legislation. Which one?
Yan yun. Malaki ang question ngayon sa mga magulang mo.
Ako, hindi ko po nakasama yung biological ko po mother. At the age of 12 po, Ma'am Karen, nalaman ko po na siya po ay kasambahay po namin. Kasambahay po ng first wife ng dad ko po. Marami pa ako nabalitaan. I-deport daw po ako. Ma'am Karen, yung sarili kong ina, iniwanan ako. Ngayon, yung sarili kong bang bansa, tatalikuran ako. I-deport po ako. Saan po ako i-deport? Malaysia, China, Singapore. Isa lang po ang passport ko po. Ako po ay isang Filipino.
There you go. Mr. Marcos, where are you intending to deport Alice Go? Hindi to dito may sino na senator now? Senator document. Chinese siya. Hindi ba siya ng China? Siya. Siya ang Vietnam. Sa po na Pampanga, pwede pa. Chinese partner Rizal Taveros took sinker. The video of Al Jazeera, Qatar's media network that is heavily invested in the US. The Senate's perfidy on this issue is suspect because no senator, not even noisy Rizal Taveros, have asked for an explanation from Erwin Tulfo, a candidate in the 2025 elections for senator, how he could have been born. First and later, Erwin Teixeira Tulfo in 1963, and then 2 years after in Hawaii as Erich Sylvester Tulfo in 1965, for which he was issued a US passport in 1981. He renewed it twice. At tulang na-appoint siya na secretary sa DSWD, doon lang niya sinuli sa US Embassy after 2 renewals. At sasabihin niya, he has not violated any US laws. He is not a scam. Hindi yan ang investigahan ninyo. The AFP, DOJ, and the NBI are busy testing further. Chinese spy stories. One even tells about 5 Chinese spies posing as Taiwanese tourists putting a CCTV camera atop a coconut tree in a beach in Palawan. This has also been debunked as it was discovered that the suspects have been living in the Philippines for the past 10 years. Diyos me yun, dumadaang barko, kukulan ng litrato, espionage. DOJ and NBI's creative digital creators obviously intended the yarn to vouchsafe the arrest of Deng Huangqi, who was merely fulfilling a business contract to map certain destinations for a self-drive business being set up in the country. Akala ko ba gusto nyo ng foreign investment? I have researched over a dozen mobile number tracking applications using subscriber identity module or SIM, SIM, freely available in the internet. One of them, Family Locator, has 14 million subscribers to it. Now, what can be more overt or open source than that? Has the AFP, DOJ, and the NBI not heard that the global positioning system, GPS, that makes this possible is a US-owned utility that provides users with positioning, navigation, and timing services? I hate to admit it, but this simply indicates that our sleuthing has come to a golden age, but no better than Rowan Atkinson, a buffoon British character who has the unique talent of turning the most ordinary situation into moments of excruciating embarrassments, otherwise known as Mr. Bean. In the Philippine setting, Mr. Bean is our Kenkoy J. Tariela. I end here and open myself to comments or questions.
Thank you, Kado, for that presentation about the fake spy scare. Again, I'd like to ask our panel of reactors if they would like to give 1-2 sentences in Zoom for their thoughts on Kado's presentation about the
Can we see the panel?
US sponsored spy scare story. Please raise your hands in Zoom if you wish to react.
Apologize for the
Yeah, earlier we had the okay. Sir Osmeña would like to give a short reaction.
Yes, good morning again. No? Gusto ko lang po i-point out kasi yung sinasabi nating spice care na sa China, medyo nililink talaga nila yung sa Pogo, no? Sa Pogo. Can we give some clarifications? Kasi pagpasok ng Pogo sa panahon ito ni Presidente Duterte, kaya pinagbibintangan ng administrasyon ni Presidente Duterte tungkol sa pag-proliferate ng Pogo, grabe ng kidnapping, up to the point ito nga, itong spice care karon ngayon na pinapalabas ng administrasyon ni Marcos. Salamat po.
Actually, I think, if I recall correctly, Pogo started way back before
In Cagayan.
Duterte.
In Cagayan.
I think in Cagayan,
CESA.
Cagayan Economic Zone, it was already operating.
Early 2000s.
So, panahon ni Noynoy Aquino, it was already operating.
Yes.
Panahon ni
Arroyo.
Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, I think it was already operating. So, there was a precedent way before. Now, nobody here supports the Pogo operations because even the Chinese government considers it an illegal operation. But any actions that all the actions that were taken to shut it down was very irrational, unplanned, and inconsiderate. Today, it's not being reported by mainstream media, but there are thousands upon thousands of POGO workers, Filipino POGO workers who are jobless, who are facing crisis. There are reports of them being recruited into other countries like Cambodia, Laos, and so on to do other jobs that are very dangerous. So that's the situation right now. So it's not Duterte's time that it started. It's way before. Does that clarify, Karico from Cebu?
Opo, salamat po, Kamento.
Thank you, Rico. Anybody else?
Yeah, if anybody else wishes to,
By the way, while we're waiting for other questions or reactions, we apologize.
earlier we had a,
There's a comment here by Dorina Rojas.
Yeah, what's up?
Dorina Rojas, does the U.S. care if Filipinos die of hunger or war because of their demonic interest? They cannot even control a wildfire with their own modern technology and sophisticated equipment.
Okay.
Yun nga po eh.
Anybody else raising the hand?
yes, before that, I'd like to apologize. Earlier, we had a few minutes of, we went offline because due to technical difficulties. We apologize for that. Next, do we have any more reactions from the panel?
Sir, gusto lang po regarding sa spy. Ito nga nagkaroon ng issue sa mga alleged spy. Nag-overreact ng ating pamahalaan. At inamin ng US Embassy na mga US agent o mga concerned agencies kaugnay sa US spy operating on Philippine soil.
Well, actually, tinanong ko nga kanina yan eh. Kung we will be sensitive to espionage, dapat even Steven, if you're a Vietnamese, Malaysian, or whatever, Chinese. Pero bakit may carte blanche ang mga Amerikano? Yan ang question dyan. And ang sagot dyan ay sila ang nagpapatakbo nitong. That's why I said earlier, our biggest national security threat. Kasi ito rin yung sa mga USAID at mga NAD na yan, na hindi na nasusunod. Hindi na nasusunod yung taong bayan at yung mga elected officials ng US. Ang nasusunod na mga narratives ng mga so-called CIA fronts actually yan. And that is admitted, no? Admitted yan na ang MED is actually in 1983, inalis ang MED, inalis ang overt activities ng CIA from the covert. Anong diferensya? Itong overt, open source. Yung covert clandestine. Tatakbo. CIA yun. Kasi umaakay. So, in-splice nila yan. In 1983, the US Congress created as a 501c3 private foundation itong National Endowment for Democracy. To promote democracies all over the country. But as Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Marco Rubio is now saying they've become really fronts for regime change. At kung hindi agree sa kanila yung country, destabilization mechanism. No? So ang sagot sa tanong na yan is, by what standard are we looking at the issue of espionage? Naging sensitive dahil, alam niyo ba mga kabansa, sa US, pag nahuli ka na espionage sa US, it's punishable up to 20 years. Maybe even 30 years or life imprisonment. No? And maybe even death. Kaya sensitive sila. Dito sa Pilipinas, sabi nga ni si nasa DWIC, si
Connect view.
Passion.
Pasyo,
Paano connect din eh?
minor offense lang ang sa Pilipinas. Punishable by fines or imprisonment of 6 months and 1 day to 6 years. So, sino ang allergic sa espionage? Tayo ba? Hindi. Mga Amerikano. Dahil sa mga ginagawa nila rito na clandestine, katulad ng sinabi mo, na ayaw nilang malaman ng taong bayan.
I think Celso Kaingle.
Yes, we have one more reaction from Professor Celso Kaingle. He's raising his hand to react to Kado's presentation. You may go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Daniel. Two things. Number one, the recent EDSA traffic fiasco when the US Embassy used that bus lane, when the enforcer photographed the ID, the US Embassy official accused the enforcer that it will be sold to a Chinese spy. If you connect the dots, it seems it's very apparent that this Chinese spy narrative comes from the US Embassy. Number two, that the plane that crashed in Maguindanao, that was obviously a reconnaissance mission. How come there was no reaction? And one more pa na, si Raymond Powell is really doing sabotage, psychological, social sabotage, political sabotage. How come there's no reaction from our government? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Yeah, moving on now to our last, not the least, our final speaker is Sas Roganto Sasot, international relations scholar. She's taking up her PhD in China right now. Is Sas now with us in the Zoom?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. How can I share my? I can already share, no? I need to send request.
We cannot see you right now. We cannot see you.
Well, I cannot start my video. You need to allow me to start my video.
Yeah, okay. Give a second now. Just okay. We're working on it. We're working on it. This is some technical.
It says I cannot
Problem.
start
Yeah,
my
let me
video
explain
because
that we have a
the host has
PLDT
stopped me.
line that doesn't work, so we're using portable Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So
PLDT, remember, is Manny Pangilinan.
yeah, we're experiencing technical difficulties earlier. So give a few minutes before it will activate.
Okay na ba?
Okay, can you try again to share video for your presentation?
No. For me, can you see my
Yes, we can see it.
PowerPoint?
There you go.
Yes.
Yes, we can see it now. Very clear. Yeah.
Okay, can I start now?
Yes, you may start now.
Okay. So many things have been said already, no? But I would like to start my presentation with Team Common Sense versus WPS cult. Okay. So imagine yourself entering a restaurant with two dining tables. Okay. One dining table is where the WPS cult is eating, and the other one is where the Team Common Sense group is eating. So this is like the typical, this would be like the typical conversation in the WPS cult dining table. You know, guest one, we hate China. Guest two, we hate China. Guest three, we hate China. Guest four, we hate China. And so on. And then guest seven would ask, guys, I have overheard the other table. They don't hate China. And then the other guest would say, we hate them. We hate them. Can they see we are so kawawa? We hate China. Yeah, we hate China. Because that's where your conversation would definitely devolve to whenever you have any dialogue with them. It's just gonna be like, we hate China. So on the other side of the table would be the team common sense, no? This would be their typical conversation. Like, there are mutual interests here that can be reconciled. Yes, let's start with the most common and easiest interest to reconcile, then work our way up to the most difficult. And of course, you will have a volume of idea, like, that's a good idea. Let's build trust first from the bottom up and then gradually work our way up. Like any negotiations, build rapport first. And of course, someone will ask, but how do we ensure that it will be a fair deal? And anyone who's knowledgeable about negotiation would say, we identify first our zone of possible agreement. We can start by splitting the difference. If we can link other issues, we get the difference there that we cannot get out of this deal, such as let's demand some investment in modernizing agriculture sector. So in short, the WPS cult is a drama maker, and the common sense group is a deal maker. So the WS cult is like the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland. If you have read the Alice in Wonderland, there is a character there called the Red Queen. And the Red Queen has to run faster and faster in order to keep still where she is. That is exactly what you all are doing. It means na, these WPS cults would like to keep on producing something, but they're still stuck in the same place, and that is reproducing the same drama over and over again. Of course, the common sense group is basically a negotiator. So we need to examine what are the personality traits of good negotiators. And we can now determine whether our president government is actually composed of good negotiators. Okay. First, this is a study. This is from a study, from different studies on the personality traits of good negotiators. Harvard Business Review summarized them, the result, a meta-analysis of all these studies in 2017. So the first trait is emotional intelligence. Okay, they found out with different studies that people with higher EQ are more likely to induce positive mood states in their negotiation counterparts and leave them more satisfied with the outcome of the negotiation. So, question to ask yourself: does the WPS cult have a high level of IQ? A high level, one of the critical components of a high level of IQ is perspective taking. Okay, so how do you develop perspective taking? You put aside your feelings so that you can concentrate only on the other person's perspective. Use open-ended questions that can help you draw out the interest and motivation that the person may not be verbalizing. Be clear about your own position and the weaknesses it has. Remove any personal intentions you may have so as not to project them on the other person. Using what you know about the other person, their background, their mood, their intention, and expectations. Imagine how they are seeing the current situation. Validate their position by paraphrasing back to them what you think their position is. And obviously, the WPS code, they don't have EQ at all. They don't care about perspective taking. All they think about is their ego and their emotions and their feelings about the situation. So another trait of a good negotiator is cognitive ability. So people with higher IQs, according to studies, tend to approach negotiations in a more cooperative or collaborative way, treating their negotiation counterpart as a partner and embracing win-win strategies that tend to leave both sides satisfied. I think you already know by now that the Philippines has one of the lowest IQ in Asia with an average collective IQ of 81. So I think you know already now the answer to the question, does the WPS cult have a high level of IQ? And another trait of a good negotiator is low neuroticism. Those who are neurotic have an excessive tendency to bargain, complain, and antagonize counterparts. Is the WPS cult neurotic? I would leave it to you, no, to answer that question. Now, we need to carefully understand what exactly our options. One, you might want to push back, you know, and that is exactly what the current administration is doing. The other one is you would like to accommodate, and that is actually being a negotiator with a high level of EQ, high level of IQ, and low level of neuroticism. So let's examine. If the Philippines push back, of course, China will also push back. Okay? There's no way that they will not also push back if you push back. Okay? Of course, we don't want that China pushing us back and then we're just accommodating. Because obviously, China would also not want it that they're accommodating and then we're pushing back. So what is the sweet spot here? We both move to the box where we make accommodations towards each other. But we cannot do that if we are actually coming from a place of low EQ, low IQ, and high level of neuroticism, which is actually happening right now in this administration. So, let me now discuss several things about the South China Sea arbitration case kasi it has been being quoted over and over again, especially by the WPS cult, this administration, and etc., etc., etc. So a key question to ask there is, na-invalidate di ba ng South China Sea Arbitral Tribunal ruling ang sovereignty claims ng China? Not at all. And anyone who has actually read the decision would actually know this by now. So what did we actually do during the arbitration? So this is a statement from our lawyer. This is from the transcript of the arbitration tribunal. So Professor Sands, one of our lawyers, said, and I quote, well, it is variations on an earlier theme. So they were replying to the objection of China regarding the arbitration, okay? Because China was saying that this concerns sovereignty. So Professor Sand says China has misconstrued the Philippines' case, and in fact, it has entirely missed the point. The Philippines' claim pertaining to China's unlawful conduct are premised on China's maximum permissible entitlement under the convention, even assuming that it has sovereignty over all disputed insular features. If a state has no entitlement, real or hypothetical, there can be no basis upon it which it can assert sovereign rights and jurisdiction. This part of the Philippines' claim, like all the Philippines' submissions, is made entirely regardless of sovereignty and entirely without prejudice to China's territorial assertions or indeed the territorial assertions of any other state. Ibig sabihin yan, and you can consult lawyers on this, the case is without prejudice, okay? Without prejudice to China's territorial assertions. So the Philippines was actually operating as well on the condition, if ever, that China had sovereignty over the islands in the South China Sea. And the Philippines just wanted to know what is the maximum maritime entitlement of the islands there. So hindi siya na-invalidate. It was never invalidated. That's why in paragraph 272 of the arbitration ruling ng 2016 on the it's called award in the PCA cases website. It says that finally, because the tribunal considers the question of historic rights with respect to maritime areas to be entirely distinct from that of historic rights to land, the tribunal considers it opportune to note that certain claims remain unaffected by this decision. In particular, the tribunal emphasizes that nothing in this award should be understood to comment in any way on China's historic claim to the islands of the South China Sea, nor does the tribunal's decision that a claim of historic rights to living and non-living resources is not compatible with the convention limit China's ability to claim maritime zones in accordance with the conventions on the basis of such islands. So ibig sabihin nun, you cannot use this arbitration tribunal ruling in order to comment on China's claim on the land features in the South China Sea. And ito yung malaking ayaw nilang i-discuss. This is a very important caveat of the South China Sea arbitration ruling. So what does this mean, no? China can claim maritime zones from those features, okay? But of course, it has to be in accordance with UNCLOS according to the tribunal. But this is a more complex issue because it is not only UNCLOS that is relevant in resolving this dispute. So this is a more complex discussion, no, of international law, especially on what we call in international law the intertemporal doctrine. It means that the actions has to be evaluated according to the law during that time. Okay, so in reference to dispute, this dispute has been ongoing since the early 20th century between China and France, and we are actually a latecomer in this dispute. So all those things, all those old that's why this is very complex. You have to judge it on the actual international law when the dispute started between China and France, and then as evolved. Kaya nga yung sinasabi nila na the South China Arbitration Tribunal ruling already resolved everything. Actually, that is incorrect. It only resolved it according to one treaty, but there are different international law applicable to the situation which has not been taken up by the tribunal. Okay, it could have been if, for example, China participated, and during the negotiations, they would identify all the applicable laws that could be applied. But China didn't participate in the tribunal because it believes primarily that unang-una, the number one objection is no negotiations had been undertaken yet between the Philippines and China, which is a prerequisite actually before you proceed to compulsory arbitration na ginawa ng Philippines. Anyway, that's a longer discussion, but I hope that you get the gist. Okay. Now, we kept talking about the United States. Okay, so I would like to address this. Why the United States wants China to fire the first bullet against the Philippines and kill at least one Filipino? That's what the United States is gunning for. Okay, the United States want China to do something stupid, like killing at least one Filipino fisherman. But luckily, China is not biting the bait. But what is the reason? Number one is sanctions. Nothing motivates the United States to impose sweeping sanctions other than death. And sweeping sanctions is an escalation of the sanctions they impose on China in the trade war the United States started with Trump during the first Trump administration. The current sanctions against China were not enough to put the Chinese economy to its knees at all. I think we have noticed this already with DeepSeek. DeepSeek was developed during the time that China was heavily sanctioned in terms of semiconductor, and the developer of DeepSeek worked develop it based on current available semiconductor capabilities of China. And they were actually able to develop something that matches, or even in some instances surpasses, the capabilities of other large language models like ChatGPT, Claude, etc. And as we all know, out of 193 countries, China is the top trading partner of 120. That is such a huge number. That's like 62% countries in the entire world. So a reason to impose wide sweeping sanctions against China would entail chipping away the number of countries that have China as their top trade partner. So the second reason why the United States would like China to do something stupid in the South China Sea, like, what I mean by stupid is actually killing at least one Filipino. It will divert China's industrial resources to war. So currently, China is not involved in any war. It is not diverting national resources to any war efforts. All its resources are internally focused and focused on economic matters, local, international. China's defense spending is actually not even half of the US staggering defense spending of 877 billion. So why is it important for the United States for China to divert its resources to war? Because of the experience of the United States. I don't know if you've heard about this, no? In 2019, President Trump, during the first Trump administration, called, former President Jimmy Carter to talk about China, because Jimmy Carter has ex-president, the late U.S. President Jimmy Carter has a extensive experience with China. So tinanong ni President Carter, si Trump, sabi niya kay President Carter, he was worried that China is getting ahead of us. So that was the concern of Trump. And President Carter told Trump he agreed. And Carter asked Donald Trump, do you know why China is ahead of us? And Donald Trump asked Carter why. Sabi ni President Carter, I normalized diplomatic relations with China in 1979. Since 1979, do you know how many times China has been at war with anybody? None. And we have stayed at war, sabi ni Carter. Although there was a brief Vietnam and China war in 1979, but it was not a full scale war, nothing close to the wars the United States had engaged in. And then Carter said that the United States is the most warlike nation in the history of the world, due to a desire to impose American values on other countries. And he suggested that China is investing its resources into projects such as high-speed railroads instead of defense spending. So Carter asked Donald Trump, how many miles of high-speed railroad do we have in this country? Referring to the United States. They said 0. So Carter said, we have wasted at least $3 trillion US dollar. And China has not wasted a single penny on war. And that's why they're ahead of us in almost every way. That's what Carter said. And that is correct. No? If that's why, in order for you to actually defeat China's rise, you would like it to spend its resources on war efforts. But China is not biting the bait. And luckily, it's not biting the bait in the South China Sea. But we are being used in order to keep on needling China to actually bite the bait, just like what they did to Russia against Ukraine, hindi ba? And nasukul kasi doon ng Russia, Russia was put in the corner, and the only way out for Russia during that time, if you're going to study everything that happened during the time, is to actually use the what has already always been called the court of last resort, and that is war. So, in relation to the Philippines, okay, we now have a president, Bongbong Marcos, and I would like to address all his actions um, using what Napoleon, the great Napoleon Bonaparte, once said about any country, okay, any country who would like to go to war with China, okay. He was commenting on um, the British war against China during that time. So this was documented by his physician. If you like, I could give you the title of the book. So this is what he said 200 years ago. Okay, Napoleon said 200 years ago, it would be the worst thing you have done for a number of years. Okay, Napoleon said to an Englishman, to go to war with an immense empire like China and possessing so many resources. So he's referring to China's possessing so many resources and its immense. In assessing the situation, Napoleon didn't hold his tongue. He told the Englishman, you would doubtless at first succeed. Take what vessels they have and destroy their trade. However, such an action will eventually backfire, Napoleon warned, because you would teach them their own strength. They would be compelled to adopt measures to defend themselves against you. The Chinese, Napoleon said, would be driven by this question. Why should we suffer a people so far away to do as they please to us? If ever the Chinese would be defeated once in time, they would build a fleet and in the course of time defeat you. Napoleon warned. So to distill the wisdom of Napoleon, what he's saying is because of her immense resources and inner strength, you may defeat China in a battle, but you cannot win a war against her. The greatest threat to your nation is the one advising a war against China. And the second advice is actually corollary to his advice about the foolishness of going to war with China. So, what did Napoleon advise instead of that? He said, you ought to monopolize the whole China trade to yourselves. Napoleon advised, instead of going to war with Chinese, it would be better to make war with the nations who desire to trade with them. Napoleon recognized the futility of defeating China. So instead of dominating China, he advised the ultimate goal of dominating the trade with China. One must redirect one's energy from competing with China towards competing with other nations, trading with China. So the wisdom applied to our current situation is we must orient our foreign policy towards benefiting from China's resources, industrial capacity, and civilizational rejuvenation, not by dominating China, but by outcompeting others who would like to dominate the trade with China. Just to give you the foolishness, okay, of our government, we used to dominate the banana market here in China. Like where we're number one. For the longest time, we were the undisputed number one. For the very first time, okay, in 2024, China has overtaken us. Vietnam has overtaken us. And it seems that we will never regain that spot anymore. Okay? Because of the improvement in agriculture in Vietnam and in other Asian countries. So while we were busy with our anti-China path, other countries, are happy to take over what we are leaving in the Chinese market. And I don't know what kind of decision makers we have that it would actually fight the market, the market of the world right now. Okay, it's not just the factor of the world, but it is the market. If you would like to develop China, here China is the market to sell to in order for your country to actually develop faster because the market is immense. There's so much opportunities here. Okay, but our decision makers think that the Philippines is so special in the world. So I think um, we actually need to wake them up from their sleep. Okay. So let me just show you, no? Economic power is always the foundation of the strength of any country. The amount of tanks you have, etc., they're useless. It's always the economy. Okay. So the Philippines, under Bongbong Marcos, really love to present himself like Zelensky fighting a big nation. So let's see. In 2024, this is the total trade of some economies in Asia. Taiwan. Let's start with the economy of Taiwan. Okay. In 2024, the estimated total trade of Taiwan, okay, with mainland China is 292.97 billion US dollar. Do you know how much Taiwan's trade with the Philippines? 7.41 billion US dollar. This was like 2023 figure. So the 2024 figure is not that far from this figure. Taiwan, total trade with China, 292.97 billion. Our total trade with Taiwan, 7.41 billion. So let's try Malaysia. Malaysia has a territorial disputes with China. Its estimated total trade with China in 2024 is 98 billion. Malaysia's total trade with us is about 4.75 billion. We are not that special. And we are acting as if we are because we love drama. Okay? We think that all the drama that we are projecting to the world is actually helping us. That is what the WP is called. It's trying to inject to your brain. But these people are idiots. They are totally deranged and out of their minds. They're not thinking about improving the economy of the Philippines, which is the foundation of any strength a country could depend and tap on. Okay? Just to give I believe dun sa poster nito, no, merong statement si VP Sara na napag-iwanan na ang Pilipinas. So this should be a wake-up call, no, to everyone. I'm going to show you the GDP PPP, purchasing power parity of Bangladesh versus the Philippines. So that green line is Bangladesh. The blue line is Philippines. I never imagined in my life that I would be comparing Philippines to Bangladesh. But as you can see, no, the GDP PPP metrics of Bangladesh and Philippines are widening, and it's widening towards Bangladesh favor. We're doing something wrong in this country, and I think we should wake up. Wake up. And our foreign policy is not actually helping us. Next, tinanong si VP bakit niya na sinabing parang God save the Philippines, no? And VP Sara said dapat iwanan na tayo, and then I don't know if the reporter is actually living under a rock. Sinabi sa kanya ni VP na, well, pagmasdan mo ang mundo, even ang ating mga kapitbahay. Okay. It is a well-known fact that railways are the backbone of industrialization. So I'm going to show you where we are with our neighbors in terms of railway network. Laos has 422 kilometers of railways. The Philippines is 130 kilometers. That's how far behind we are. That's why Cambodia and Laos, we will wake up one day. They have already overtaken us. And I would like you to search on the new airport of Cambodia. My God. The airport of Cambodia, parang lalaban sa airport ng Singapore. That's Cambodia. And outside our region, let me bring you to Burkina Faso. This is just recent, Burkina Faso is now able to manufacture their own locally made electric car. Burkina Faso. This is in Africa. Burkina Faso just had a coup. And they were able to manufacture already their first electric car. And we're still debating on whether we're going to have jeepney modernization. We're still debating whether it's very sad. We're wasting a lot of time. We're wasting a lot of time because one, the mainstream media is not really asking the right questions. There are a bunch of they are just mouthpieces of the oligarchs that owns them. They don't really care about the real interest of the Filipino people. And that is to fucking develop and develop fast. Wala eh. Puro drama. No? So imagine, while Burkina Faso unveiled its first locally made electric car, this is our country. Philippines to seek clarification on US aid freeze. Do you know how pathetic that sounds like? So Burkina Faso unveils its first locally made electric car, and our country would like to ask about US aid. So this is ridiculous. Okay. Now, so what anong ginagawa ng ibang bansa na merong disputes with China? Okay. For a long time, we have heard about Indonesia actually destroying foreign boats that are fishing in their sea. Just for your information, Indonesia has already abandoned the practice because it's not doing anything. It's counterproductive, and it's not actually improving even the lives of the fishermen in Indonesia. So what are they trying to do right now? They are now entering into joint fishing ventures with China. For example, this one. This is just recent. No? In January 12, 2025, Indonesia and China has a joint venture to develop fisheries system in Maluku and Papua. So how much is now the reported commitment for the joint venture between a Chinese company and another Indonesian company? It's about 460 million US dollars. They would like to build an integrated fisheries system in Maluku and Papua. Okay. Meanwhile, this is what we're doing with our fishermen. Atin ito coalition claims victory after resupply mission. What victory is there? Did you improve the lives of the fishermen? Did you actually industrialize the fishing industry with this drama? So let me just put them side by side, no, to show how pathetic the WPS cult is. Look at that, you know. And with that, I'm already finished with my presentation, and I would like to answer any questions from the audience.
Okay. Thank you, Sas. First, I'd like to invite the panel of reactors earlier if they want to give any short reactions, then let's check some questions sent to us via Facebook, Zoom, if that's possible, or YouTube, if we'll try to get to them. Again, thank you again, Sas, for that sober reminder of what actual independent countries are up to. Okay, please raise your hands in Zoom if you wish to react to Sas's presentation. Okay, Mr. Eric
Rick and Sin.
and Encina.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
let's
sir.
and next would be
Quezon Province.
from Quezon.
Hello? Hello? There's something wrong with the.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, well, Madam Professor Suss, your talk is very interesting, and I do agree with you. However, my question is, what do you think is the best urgent solution that we Filipinos or the Philippines be closer to China? I understand that BRICS and the Belt and Road have been the bridges of the Philippines to get in close with China's economic miracles. Unfortunately, I know that America is the hindrance because of the U.S. foreign policies, and our economic system is based on neoliberal economics. The Western-based economies are still controlling us, particularly the U.S. Federal Reserve System influencing our central bank when it comes to the what we call the exchanges or of our peso to dollars. So, what do you think would be the best way? I like Chinese economy because China has its own people's public banking system. I heard from other writers that China is not really borrowing money from foreign banks. In fact, China is the one lending money to many nations. In fact, America, I heard, is also indebted with China, and China is although Chinese people are in debt within their own system, but they're not borrowing overseas because they have their own banking system, creating their own yuan money, and they have the facilities and structures to convert yuan money into US dollars, and then they can lend money to foreign lands. So it's very interesting. So we need to do the same. I think joining with BRICS fully and in agreement with the Belt and Road economic infrastructures are much better than we will continue to go along with the U.S. economic foreign policies that are detrimental to our national interests. Thank you
Okay,
po.
Sas, let's try to. Did you get all of that?
Hello?
Hello.
Can
Yes,
you hear
yes,
me?
yes. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you so much, Eric, for your question. No, that is a very good question to ask. You're asking about the urgent solution. Um, Urgent solution is really to change the leadership. Number one, you know, well, maybe suffering is good, no? Maybe we need to suffer until 2028 for us to see the full effects of our actions. We are already seeing it. Have you seen the data of our trade? I
Yes.
think we were, 'di ba? Bumaba na yung trade natin. And I've told you, we used to dominate the banana trade in in China. Nung una akong dumating dito, I first arrived here in Beijing in 2023, August 2023. And natutuwa ako kasi dito sa campus university namin, Eric, no, just to give you a very exemplary situation on how we lost this trade. In our campus, we have 16,000 students in our campus, and we have a campus smart. And noon, nakikita ko pa, ang banana pa na binibenta dito sa campus namin, from the Philippines, it's from the Philippines. And I think in 2024, I no longer see Philippine bananas in our campus mart. And I was like, okay. So even in supermarkets outside our campus, I can no longer see the banana. It's now dominated by bananas from Vietnam, Ecuador, as far as Ecuador actually, and even from Dominican Republic. So dun mo makikita na talagang the trade is waning. And I think we really have a bad leadership, and
Yes.
because our leadership do not understand the current structure of the world. I don't know if you remember what I asked to then candidate Bongbong Marcos during the SMNID probe. I asked him, where are you going to position yourself? Where are you going to position the Philippines when the new world order is going to be redrawn? And I told him that this might happen within his administration. Ang sinabi ko doon na turning point would be the end of the Russian-Ukraine war. And it's going to end soon. And as we can see, you know, the Philippines doesn't know where to place itself. It is placing itself behind the United States. So I think we really need change of leadership, but maybe suffering is good. No, we need to suffer until 2028, and we could really see, no, the direction that this administration has actually pursued is leading us either to stagnation or further maldevelopment. Okay, so but if we cannot change leadership, I think our Chamber of Commerce will need to speak up. Cooperatives need to speak up. All economic sectors need to speak up because the current foreign policy of the Philippines is working against it. It has no ROI at all. No, if you're going to look at the economic data, we're not really producing money. No, as you can see, we are taking the money of the working class and then using that money as dole outs for those who don't work. So we are actually in a circular economy, but we're not actually redistributing money from the upper class to the lower class, but we are getting it from the working class to the non-working class, because we're not producing actually any jobs. The economy is not actually productive, and what is the reason for that? I think we have been captured again um by the old economic order. Ano na eh, we are already on the verge of destroying the old economic order, but it came back with a vengeance. I'm really sorry for being one of the instruments in making that happen, in promoting Bongbong Marcos. But that is the case. Um, we have to do a lot of things. Okay, I'm not really sure if we can rebuild our relationship with China with the current administration. But there might be a way, especially if Bongbong Marcos remove all the war hawks and stupid bureaucrats influencing his foreign policy. Maybe that could be a way. His father did that before. If you can remember, uh, during his father's time, it was the Cold War. It was actually not allowed to have any sort of communication with socialist countries. But the difference is during Marcos Senior's time, Marcos Senior has actually intelligent bureaucrats. Okay, Arturo Tolentino. You have who's this Romulo, okay, who was advising him that the Philippines should start forming relationship with the socialist bloc. Okay. And Marcos Sr. actually listened to them. And he started forming relationship with China. And to those who don't know this, during the oil crisis, we actually had a deal with China for China to supply us oil at a friendly price. And China actually did it in the 70s. So that's the urgent thing, you know. Either we replace the leadership or Bongbong Marcos finally wakes up and realize that this path is going nowhere. It will only lead to further maldevelopment of the country. And I'm really sorry, but I think that's the only thing that I can think of right now. But the problem we have is it's really hard to put this out there because as Herman Laurel and Ado correctly pointed out, the mainstream media is controlled by the US government, and Elon Musk has already exposed that most of the mainstream media in the world are financed by the United States.
Okay, thank you.
Hello? Sino ba?
Hello?
Si Eric ba ulit?
Thank you,
Okay.
madam. Very interesting.
Do we have any?
Very, very interesting explanation. Sana po magkaroon ng maganda. Salamat po.
Okay, Eric.
Okay, thank you.
Salamat po.
Thank you for your great question. Thank you.
I think if there are no
Are there any other questions? Can we please check from Zoom, from Facebook, from YouTube? Okay. I'll try to read some of them. Okay.
Edwin Pancha from Cagayan is from
Mr. Pancha,
Pancha.
Pancha from Cagayan, please unmute yourself. Give a reaction to what was presented. Yeah, can you hear us? Hello? We can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Hello, hello.
Yeah. Okay, loud and clear.
Yeah, I just would like to share our sentiment here in Cagayan, no? Because in Cagayan Valley, we have 3 EDCA sites. And considering na nung una, our governor, as in, grabe yung pagkontra niya sa EDCA site. Particularly here in Cagayan, because we have 2 sites in Cagayan, no? EDCA sites. One in Naval Base in Santa Ana, and the other is in the non-functional Lalo International Airport in Lalo, Cagayan. No, and the other is in Isabela, within the military camp of the 5th Infantry Division in Camp Utigamu, Isabela. Ako naman naniniwala na the governor will not abandon yung kanya pong naging pagkontra rito dahil alam naman natin kung paano niya kinontra ito. And we hope na yung mga kasama sa partido nila ngayon ay magbago rin ng paninindigan because election period, nangyari kasi yung mga kumontra dati signing a resolution na sumusuporta dun sa EDCA sites contrary to the stand of the governor, magkakasama ngayon sa politika. Sana nga lang ay hindi magbabago yung ganong paninindigan, no? And another thing is, I would like to express my gratitude to all of you. Ma'am Sas, no? I'm one of your follower. Isang pitik mo lang sa nakakaano na sa akin, nakakatasa sa akin na ito palang nangyayari sa buong mundo, ito palang nangyayari sa Pilipinas. Kahit na ano lang, isang sentence lang na pitik mo, alam ko na ito palang nangyayari sa buong mundo, ito palang nangyayari sa Pilipinas. And of course, your analysis and that of Kamentong, Kaado, no? Your analysis on what is really happening in this country and in the world, no? You are my first reference sa aking mga radio programs pagdating ho sa pag-analisa rin sa tunay na sitwasyon dito. And I am very grateful, I'm thankful na nandyan po kayo na nagiging reference ko sa aking mga pagtalakay, pag-analisa sa mga issues nangyayari dito sa Pilipinas, sa buong mundo. And yun lang, it's just an expression of yung paghanga ko sa paninindigan niyan. Maraming salamat. Sana nga, darami pa lahi natin. Thank you so much. Maraming salamat.
Thank you. Pancha ng Tuguegarao, a broadcaster that I follow every morning. So thank you very much for your participation, Edmund, and your other friends there in Tuguegarao.
Okay, thank you for Ms.
That's okay.
Chair Pacha, for your question. Next, we'll have we'll hear from Professor Celso Cainlet again, reaction to what SAS has presented. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Sas, for the excellent presentation. You know, in my humble opinion, beyond international relations, beyond economic progress, I think the reading from the comments in YouTube, Sas was very right about the low IQ, and many of them are trolls. You know, I think we need a cultural revolution because we have a damaged culture resulted from the wounds of colonialization and ideologization of religion. Aside from regime change, I think we have to push for a model. I'm pushing for a social democratic model. In fact, the socialism with Chinese characteristic that is being preached by President Xi is actually social democracy. Maybe from here, Kamentong talk about this for a long time already. In our forum, we need to start talking about a political model of socialism, no? Because democracy in this country did not work. Thank you very much.
I have a question for SAS.
No
No other question.
question.
Okay.
Let's wrap up.
Okay. SAS, do you have
Message.
a short message? Closing remarks? Short message?
I'm sorry. What did you say?
Do you have a short message or closing
Ano
remarks?
sabi mo, Daniel?
Hello?
Hindi kita marinig.
Okay.
Anong sabi mo?
Do you have a short message or
Hindi kita
closing
marinig.
remarks?
Hindi kita marinig.
Hello? Can you hear me now? Hello?
Hindi kita marinig. Walang sound, Daniel, sa Zoom. Ano ba? Hindi na talaga tayo nag-improve. Anyway, yeah, well, I agree, no?
Hello?
Actually, the Philippines is revolution for Philippines is long overdue. Okay, we have been stuck in this kind of situation for a very, very long time. We cannot go back anymore. We already seen we have already gone full circle. We thought that a second Marcos administration would actually be better because we thought na they're working towards redemption. But imbes na naging redemption, Diyos ko, naging repeat, naging worse pa dun sa unang Marcos administration, no? And as far as political model, pero kasi ang nakikita ko kasi dito, Celso, no? I think the Filipinos are not gonna do it themselves. They're not gonna go and go to the street and revolt. But I think if there's going to be a great reset, no? That might not be coming from a people's power. I think the people will accept it. Ba na yung nangyayari sa Pilipinas, no? We are so far behind and Filipinos don't realize it. Pero yung mga OFWs, they realize it because they come from other countries, they return to the Philippines, and then they see that the Philippines is not really improving that much. yung ibang bansa, my God, they are already um almost has a high-speed railway. Not even make a decent our railway is still, panahon pa ng mga lolo't lola ng mga nandito. Ano na tayo talaga, very, very far behind. We are like a poor copy of the United States. 'Di ba United States is also dealing with, a lot of weird and inefficient practices. I think, we need something like that to actually overhaul the government system. No? Katulad ng ginagawa ni Trump sa United States kasi, wala na tayong patutunguhan. And I think kailangan talaga na someone with a political will to come back again. Someone na ginagawa ni Trump ngayon, really overhauling the government. Luckily, merong parang Elon Musk sa United States, no? I don't know, maybe we need to get Elon Musk and evaluate our government system and then tell him to suggest what should be removed, improved, etc.
Thank you very much, Madam Sarobando. This is Mentong again. And we're nearing the close of our discussion for today. And it is very exciting to have participation from the key cities of our provinces, which we hope we will be expanding in the following sessions that we have here. I think we provide the ideology for the revolution for the country to zoom ahead from the disaster that we have seen in the 35 years of the domination of the country and its direction by neoliberals, really championed by the Philippine oligarchy, which is a very parasitic class. And that is part of the problem and challenge that we have to remedy. Leadership is available, but it is not consolidated. And that is one of our tasks. Of course, a big part of this is the Duterte movement and Vice President Sara Duterte. But more should be involved, and this is our continuing message that we have to finish the unfinished revolution. So I'd like to plug at this point our Sunday program with Kaado and the group, The Unfinished Revolution. We also have now a Saturday radio program over DZRJ, Radio Bandido, 810 on your dial. Sunod ng Filipino, 7 to 8 in the morning for those that are not very conversant with the internet. And we have other efforts. We, by the way, also have a book. Maybe in our next sessions, we will raffle this off to our audience. In the provinces in particular, it's a very innovative book. We have a bookmark here where there are some videos, including the video of Scott Twitter warning the Philippines that advising the Philippines, warning the Filipinos that the United States of America is not a friend of the Filipino. It's not a friend of the Philippines. It is using the Philippines. So the message we want to bring out we are fighting also mainstream media. We're fighting the Inquirer. We're openly saying this. We're fighting the Philippine Star. We're fighting TV5. We're fighting ANC, GMA7. They're all purveyors of fake news. Rappler, of course. So that is why we're beginning to reach out to every major city of the country. And we openly call on the military to engage in this discussion because the military is finally, in the final analysis, the bearer of the guns of society. And power comes from the battle of a gun. All we need is ideology on top of the battle of the gun. And there is nowhere to go for the Philippines but forward and up. If we give it a chance, we are severely directed today, for example, a dominant sea power in the world have no consciousness at all of our potential for us to in the imagination of our nation. So with that, maybe final words from Sas and Kado.
Yeah, I'd just like to
Microphone.
elaborate to further answer the question of Chris from the CRJ. In my research, there is the Article 117 of the Revised Penal Code and the Code Against Anti-National Acts, CA 616. These are the laws dealing with espionage. And I'm alarmed because the suspects have been there for many days, weeks. We're not aware of any charges filed against them. Nothing has come out, nothing is transparent, and they are being held without bail. And in the Philippines, prison correction lamang ang espionage. No? It's not even a serious felony. But the rights of these people, especially because they are even foreigners, they're being detained, so-called democratic country, the most democratic country in Asia. Kaya sinasabi ko na, and I would like to borrow a word from Elon Musk of DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. What is happening in our country is really a form of predatory governance. In his turn, weaponizing the government against the people. Weaponizing the government against the people. Simple lang ho ang espionage sa definition ng ating mga batas. 5 elemento. Unauthorized access. Nag-enter ba ng restricted area such as a military establishment to obtain material or information? Isa. Unauthorized access. Pangalawa, may na-violate ng confidentiality. The nature of the material or information is confidential or restricted from public view and knowledge. Eh, yung minamapa nung si Jen, nasa Waze, nasa Google. Siyempre, hindi niya gamitin nyo kung gagamitin niya sa negosyo kasi copyrighted ang Google at saka copyrighted ang Waze. So they have to devise their own copy. Number 3, intent. Is the action deliberate? O baka accidental lang yan or circumstantial? And may purpose sila ron. It's a business purpose, commercial purpose. Transfer of information, number 4. Nilipat na nila creation of information to another questionable organization or state. And number 5, which is the most important component of espionage, substantial harm, undue advantage injurious to the home state given to a recipient foreign state or organization. Turista, kumukuha lang ng mga bangkot na dumadaan. What is so about the Philippine? What is so secret about the Philippine Coast Guard? Hindi lang mababa ang EQ nyo according to Sasunando Sason. Mababa ang IQ nyo dahil You are not doing this for the Republic of the Philippines. Kayo'y napag-uutusan ng isang panyagang bansa at gobyerno ngayon. Papayag ba tayo nito? Kaya, miski na sinong tanongin mo, hindi nila maintindihan kung sa pupunta itong mga polisiya ni Marcos Jr. Ha? At saka bakit pabago-bago? Kasi wala silang sariling bait. They are just following instructions. Now, this has to stop at some point. And I don't think the people have the patience up to 2028 to be able to come up with a mechanism for real change. Kailangan may mangyayari na. Na wala naman kasi hindi, it's not up to the grade that will land into a judicial conviction. No? Pero alam naman natin na propaganda lang ang habol nila. Dinidemonize lang nila. They're weaponizing the government to demonize their dissenters. So ano klaseng demokrasya meron tayo? Ito po ang 5 elements ng espionage. I-measure nyo. No? Hindi sa panuntunan ng Amerika, panuntunan ng ating revised penal code and code against anti-national acts. Unauthorized access, confidentiality, intent, transfer of information, and substantial harm. Kung nakikinig ang NBI, meron 24 hours, wala kayong demand. Kailangan pa rin yung suspect. Ha? Kung may demand ba na, pwede mag-post ng bail. Eh bakit pati yung embassy nila, ayaw yung pakausap yung mga tao nila? Bakit ayaw yung pabigyan ng access yung mga abogado nila, yung mga kamag-anak nila? Ang klase kayo. Yung sa law of 1970 of the 1970s. Thank you.
Okay, I think
Thank
we
you.
can end our.
Yeah.
Sas,
Sas, do you have closing remarks or a short final statement?
Yeah.
Hello?
Well, thank you so much again about, narinig niyo ba ako? Can you hear me?
Yes, very clear.
Can you hear me ba?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, ito na naman tayo. Alam mo, paulit-ulit tayong ganito, no? I think, Diyos mio, parang more than magte-10 years na. My God, magte-10 years na tayong ganitong paulit-ulit tayo ng sinasabi. And we're not moving forward. We are actually stagnating as a nation. Cambodia would look so different already in a few months' time. We will be so behind, and we might be sending. Actually, we're already sending OFWs to Cambodia. So, but Cambodia is not sending OFWs to us. So, in order to shore up its economy, nakakalungkot lang dahil we have wasted so much time. I think the Marcoses really fucked up, really disappointed a lot of us because they thought we thought na they would overturn, the yellow kind of politics, pero mas malala pa ito, no? They brought everything back My God, parang ano ba? What exactly would you like the country to be? Again, ibabalik ko no, yung sinabi ko kanina sa presentation ko, while Burkina Faso is actually being celebrated for producing its own electronic vehicle in the indigenously made, we are pining for the loss of US aid. My God, my God, this is like mendicant culture. And our mendicant culture has already been criticized by the great Claro M. Recto in the 1950s. My Lord Almighty, it's already 2025 and we're still that same mendicant culture, no? Um, and I think this is so deeply entrenched in our society. Look at the ayuda, the AKAP, the tupad. These are all, mendicancy related actions. And um, again, I think the protector of the people has to step up. How can you tolerate seeing the country like this? You need to step up, speak up, because you will just be used, again, for all these people na driving the country towards war against the United States. But you know what? There is some hope, someone leaked to me an internal document sa military. We talked about this last night. And just to give you an idea, meron palang last year, merong ginawang AFP. Ang title is AFP communication plan to the West Philippine Sea Mulat. So, parang ang feeling nila, they're enlightening soldiers about the West Philippine Sea. And out of the 6,281 target internal audience, 1,133 lang yung parang nag-participate. So, wala pa sa kalahati. So, parang naisip ko, hindi kaya ito yung mga bumili ng libro ko. Anyway, kasi ang daming bumili ng libro ko sa military. So, at least we're seeing, no, na hindi nyo minumulat ang mga taong bayan. Ginagawa nyo sa kanila, ini-indoctrinate nyo sila sa walang kakwenta-kwentang bagay. We should be talking about development. We should be talking about industrialization. We should be talking about bridging the gap between the rich and poor. We should be talking about lowering the price of electricity. That is the problem of every Filipinos. We should be talking about food security. My Lord Almighty, did you know what just Bongbong did? He went to Cambodia in order to get Cambodia's help for our food security. How on earth the Philippines is now asking the help of Cambodia for food security? Nakakaawa na to. This is not a joke anymore. We are like a country that has champagne taste but has Kool-Aid money or sagugulaman money. Ang hilig-hilig magpasosyal ng Malacanang, ng mga politiko. Look at our congressman. Lahat sila may Hermes. Do you know what? If that happens in China, that politicians will be panned by the people, and most probably that politician will be investigated for corruption, and most probably that politician will be sentenced to death because corruption might really be the reason why that politician has that ostentatious lifestyle. But the institution that's supposed to protect the people, can you imagine, no? Huli ko na to. Can you imagine? I had this debate with, who's that? Harry Cabuno, the AFP, I think spokesperson or something like that. I was like asking him, why ang AFP, bakit hindi nagsasalita, nilalabanan ng corruption? You know what he said? Tinanong niya, hindi naman daw responsibilidad ng AFP labanan ng korupsyon. Gagawin namin, yung hindi naman matatakot ang mga politiko sa mga taong bayan. Kung natakot ang mga politiko laban sa taong bayan, laban sa corruption, hindi nila gagawin, hindi nga sila takot sa taong bayan. Okay? Takot sila sa inyo. If you speak up, manginginig yung mga yan. But you're not speaking up because if you're not speaking up against corruption, you're tolerating it. If you're not speaking up government inefficiency, you're tolerating it. If you're not speaking up that the country is actually being outpaced even by a country like Burkina Faso, which by the way, you know, had a coup d'etat and they're fine. You're tolerating it. Yeah, I think kailangan yung magkaroon ng deadline. Until when are we going to tolerate this kind of system in the Philippines? If you think that it will change, that these people in power right now will change it while they're benefiting it, we're gravely mistaken. Something has to be done. And I think it's the military that should speak up dahil kayo rin ang kawawa. Can you imagine? You are paying taxes and your taxes is being used by these politicians in order to give tupad and ayuda to the poor. Poor din naman kayo, di ba? But it is your money they're using in order to make papogi to the poor. Does it make any sense to you? Of course not. And there's a lot of things that's not making any sense in this country from its development model to the way that it's redistributing wealth. It's not even actually redistributing wealth, it's redistributing the money raised by the working class, and to the foreign policy. And if you think that this is that the Philippines is headed to a rational direction, you are gravely mistaken. So I think it's time to wake up. And for me, it's really the middle class that needs to wake up. But the thing is, you're not waking up because you are too entertained. But if you're going to just keep yourself being entertained and you're not thinking about the future of the country, we might send OFWs to Laos in order to take care of their children. I don't think if you would like that, no. And it's already a currently sad affair that Cambodia would have an airport that could match Singapore's airport, while we're still debating about having an ID system. We're still debating whether we're going to modernize the jeepneys. We're still debating about a lot of things that should have been resolved a long time ago. But what are we doing, diba? And this reflects on the kind of country we have. And always remember that a country, a foreign country will always be attracted about how you govern your country. And when they look at the Philippines and they see that the Philippines is badly governed, don't expect that they would trust you with their investment, because they know that because the country is not going anywhere, it's not going to produce the intended result of their investment. That's why they're investing somewhere else. No, they're now investing in Cambodia. We will definitely see Cambodia rise up spectacularly in the next few years. And maybe if Bongbong survives 2020 until 2028, he will leave a country that is totally totally far behind Cambodia. It's already happening. Cambodia already outpaced us in terms of tourist arrivals. Can you imagine? Yung Vietnamese isang Vietnamese newspaper pa yung sabi na the Cambodia outpaced the Philippines, and sabi pa nila the Philippines is actually the prime beach destination in Asia, but Cambodia outpaced us. Hindi pa ba kayo magigising niyan? Anyways, kung gusto niyo pang matulog po, pwede pa naman. No? Pero baka gusto niyo gumising. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sas. Thank you so much for that enlightening presentation. Thank you. Okay. Again, thank you to the speakers today, Kamintong Laurel, Celso Kainglet, Sas, for enlightening us about the true situation about our country and how we're being left behind. Thank you to everyone who was joining us via Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, and will join us in the replay. Thank you so much.